Hey everybody, it's Donald. Welcome back to my channel, or welcome to my channel if you're new. Today I'm going to be going over, I did a little poll over on my YouTube channel asking you guys what you guys wanted to see. I had a story time, which is what I'm going to go over today about how I went to high school with a murderer. I also have, missing persons cases if you guys are interested in that. There's one that I'm going to be covering really soon. I actually have an interview this week with the missing persons family, and then also just kind of the mental health sphere. I know a lot of you guys have talked about how me talking about my mental health has been helpful for you guys, and so I wanted to see what you guys wanted to see content-wise from me, and a vast majority of you guys all told me you wanted to see, or not see, hear my story time about how I went to high school with a murderer. And so it's crazy, but I'm not shit talking. I actually did go to high school with somebody who murdered his girlfriend's mom, and it was really, really shocking because he was in marching band with me. I'm a band geek, just in case any of y'all curious, but yeah, I was a band geek. He was in band, and so that's how I knew him, and he was the kindest, nicest person. And we would joke with each other all the time. So when this happened and I found out that he killed the woman that I'm about to tell you about, it took a while for things to sink in. Now I have talked with him over Messenger and things like that, so I don't know how prison is set up to work with like Facebook and things like that, but I have talked with him privately, and we've gone through, like, I haven't ever asked him to tell me the story because I know for him, he gets asked that a lot. So I try and talk to him about other things, and he's very religious. So, like, even when I knew him, he was extremely religious. So for him to have done this, it was just, and it still is to me. And I guess the best thing I can tell you about people is appearances can be deceiving, and you truly don't know somebody as well as you think you might, just based on how they act around others and all of that. So I'm gonna go ahead and tell you guys my story, and I hope that you enjoy it. And if you guys want more story times, I can do more story times, but this is the most, aside from me having my fallout with the Mormon church, this is like the most, I think, dramatic thing that's happened in my life with someone that I actually knew. Now, this case took place in 2008, and here's the funny thing. This name is going to sound very familiar to you guys. If any of you guys are true crime, this name is going to sound very familiar, and they are not related. His name is Brian Laundrie. That's his legal name. It is not the same Brian from Gabby Petito. This is a completely different Brian. And to me, yeah, it's freaking crazy. Two Brian Laundries ended up killing. It blew my mind. Like, it was really trippy for me with the Gabby Petito case because of what I knew about Brian. And like I told you, he was very meek and mild, and he could, make you laugh. I would make him laugh. We would joke around with each other, and, band geeks were crazy. Just ask anybody who was in marching band, and they'll tell you. We have fun. But I graduated in 2007, and this happened in 2008. So he was a year younger than me. So he would have just graduated when this happened. So he was just barely 18. And essentially, he started dating a girl who was younger than him. I believe she was 15 or 16 at the time. And they had been dating for a couple months. And the mom didn't like Brian. And so she told the daughter that she didn't want her to be in contact with Brian anymore. Because Brian was an adult and her daughter was still a minor, and she didn't approve of the relationship. They both did not take that well, and eventually it turned into them sneaking to see each other. She would lie to her mom about where she was going and who she was with and all this other stuff to go see him. And essentially it boiled down to, I wish my mom was dead. Just as, things kind of happen when you're a teenager and you get pissed. You're like, I wish my parents were dead, or I wish they weren't here, or I wish I didn't have to listen to them. That kind of conversation started, and it went from that to, let's kill my mom so we can be together. And it was a decision that both of them had made together. Now, I don't know his ex-girlfriend's name, and plus, since she's a minor, those records are sealed, so I can't even get her name. But, yeah, she talked him into killing her mom. And when he killed her, they really did not think this through. Because his girlfriend had a little sister who I want to say was between the ages of like 5 and 8. And they didn't put her into the equation of what happened. Now, what he did is, when his girlfriend was out, he broke into her house while her mom was there, and he stabbed her to death in front of the little sister. Now, he was wearing a ski mask and things like that, but the little sister was there. She saw what happened, and she was able to call 911 and talk to them fairly quickly. And so it didn't take long for police to get there. And once they started, combing through, they find out about the daughter and about the relationship that the daughter has with the boyfriend, and that they didn't get along. Now, as police investigations go, they take a little bit of time to gather evidence to go through suspects. And one of the things that they did was they interviewed the little sister, they interviewed the girlfriend, and then they also interviewed Brian. And because obviously the girlfriend had been like, yeah, my mom had issues with my boyfriend, and the reason that she did that was because they didn't want it to be like, well, why didn't you tell us there were problems? Like, that was the kind of thing they thought, well, if we're open about it and tell them, then it will look like we're innocent, like we didn't do anything. And as they started to go through the evidence and process everything, they started going, obviously they got a hold of the cell phones. And 2008 is, people from my generation, that's when the first wave of cell phones came out, where you could actually text people and call people. And I'm not sure if that's when the first iPhone came out, but cell phones were very, you could actually do things with them. And so they were able to get text messages from Brian's girlfriend where they were talking about his girlfriend's mom. And they never really admitted to, or they never said to each other through text messages talking about killing someone. But the one thing that put the police on his trail right away was a text from the daughter to him saying, and he texted her after her mom's name was Darlene. After he murdered Darlene, he sent a text message to his girlfriend, and all it said was, "It's done." So right there, the police were like, well, I wonder what he means by "it's done." And so they started to do background checks on him and did get more information on him. And obviously, something that had happened to him a couple weeks beforehand is he had his bike stolen, and he reported that to the police. And so the police wanted to interview him further. And one of the things that they did was they knew he wouldn't come in and talk after the initial interview that they did the first time. So what they did this time was say, "Hey, can you come in? We want to talk to you about, the case with your bike. And ask you a couple more questions about that." And so Brian's like, "Oh, absolutely." So he went in, he went to the police station, and essentially by that time the police had ascertained enough evidence to get a search warrant for his home, and they found the murder weapon and everything that linked in a backpack that had a notebook with information about the crime and everything. And so they were able to prove that he had committed the crime. But when they brought him in there, at first it was to talk about his bike, and then they eased into, "Well, why don't you tell us about Darlene? And, your girlfriend, what was the issues? Why were there issues? Why did she say this? And then it started going to, "Well, we've discovered this. Why did you send this? Why did you do this?" And during the middle of the interview, he was given his Miranda rights, and the Miranda rights are given when you are going to be interrogated. For example, at that point, he was getting charged with premeditated first-degree murder. And so they gave him, they read him his Miranda rights and asked him if he wanted to continue talking with them or if he wanted an attorney. He did talk with them for a little bit, and then he stopped and said that he would like an attorney. And it did go to trial, and so I've got a couple articles that I have pulled up so we can go through them together. And when I tell you his name, see, it says Brian Paul Laundrie. Can't make that shit up. He even looks like the other Brian too. It's extremely fucking trippy, I tell you. But if we scroll down, here you go. Talks about how he was hung. It came to a hung jury for the. Excuse me. Thought I was gonna sneeze there for a second. They hung on a murder charge, but convicted the man of conspiracy to commit killing the girlfriend's mom. So, essentially, what they said was, it wasn't something that you had planned on doing, but the premeditation was there. He had the premeditation, and when he went to the house, he was going to. That was his goal, to kill his girlfriend's mom. And so he, at the time of the trial, was 21. And this happened in September of 2008. And the one thing that the defense tried to do was get his confession thrown out because they said there's an issue with the Miranda rights in the case. They felt like it was unconstitutional and that his rights had been violated. But eventually the judge ruled and said no, it doesn't matter. He did get his Miranda rights, and so they lost that. And so they just, here's the prosecutor, absolutely, the intent is to hold him responsible for the murder. We will go to trial unless he changes his plea. So he originally changed his, so after everything happened, he did plead guilty, and he got 25 years in prison. And when you go through here, it talks about he had a friend who was aware of the situation as well, but I don't really know who Jonathan is. I just knew who Brian was, and so I don't know who this gentleman is. He said he was aware that they were talking about this before it had happened. So there's the element of premeditation. You have somebody coming in saying, I was on a phone call and the three of us talked about it. And then, but Brian said that they never had this conversation. So, you have he said, she said, or he said, he said. And, the adult son, I forgot. See, I get the little girl and the son mixed up. She had a son, and what happened was the son came home and called 911, but the daughter saw the murder happen. Shot 3 times and stabbed in the neck, and they did recover this knife. And this is where it talks about the case of the daughter being a minor. And then it said, Sadler's daughter made him feel inadequate and toyed with him more than once about his masculinity, once going into a shower with another male saying, I just smell like a boy now. Landry said she had sewn him an heirloom Luger that his grandmother had given to Sadler's daughter, another high school student, when he left the room, and so she gave him that gun. And so he ended up with 25 years. And then here we say it's more of the daughter wanted him to kill her mom. And then, so this is from Orange County Register. And then here is another one. Another article about him. Orange County man who killed girlfriend's mother. Police cheated for confession. And this is where I was talking about where his defense team had tried to fight for what was going on in his case, and that his rights were taken, and that the confession that they received was unconstitutional. And then it talks about how the court said no, he was given his Miranda rights at some point and continued to talk with police. But if you guys really want more information about this case, this is going to blow your minds. Unusual Suspects. I don't know, all my true crime people may know that show from Investigation Discovery. They covered this case. And it's called Murdered on Memory Lane. And it's really good. Like, I'm getting chills just like living through what I went through feeling when this happened, and then when I watched this episode, I was just like, holy shit. Like, it was absolutely insane. And but yeah, see, her 5-year-old daughter saw it, and then the older son came home and called 911. So this one is a little bit more, I guess you could say, easier to read than the first article, but this one talks more so to also about what they talk about in the show. And she was only 49, and that's the sad thing, is parents just, as teenagers, I know most of us have been there where we've been like, I can't stand my parents, I hate them, they want to ruin my life, they won't let me do anything that I want to do. And so then it just turns into this really, really emotional, and that's part of being a teenager and becoming an adult, is going through that and learning how to not feel that way, and learning to understand that eventually, as we get older, we look back and realize that our parents were just doing what they felt was right. And, as you get older, you can see that. And talking with Brian over the years, he has expressed remorse for what he did, to me at least. And he knows that what he did was wrong. And he said that if he could go back in time and change things, then he would do it. He said that I would give my life to give hers back. And I know that his family has suffered as well. They've received death threats and all these other things, which people need to understand. When a family is affected by the loved one who is the perpetrator of a crime, they're already having to deal with the fact that of someone that they love dearly, who they thought that they knew, has done something so horrific. And you continue to attack. It doesn't do anybody any good, and it's really difficult on the family. And I wish more people would be compassionate, and that's where I have the thing where I talk about, it's always easy to be mean to somebody who you think is guilty or who you know is guilty. It is easy to trash talk them and tell them that they're a horrible person and say really disgusting, horrible things. What's a lot harder to do is show them compassion. And I'm talking about reaching out to them and saying, you know what? I know that you fucked up. And I don't agree with what you did. But I will still be your friend, and I won't treat your family disrespectfully. I will treat them with kindness, and I will treat you respectfully. That is a lot harder to do than to just say, wow, I can't believe you're a fucking murderer, you're a terrible person. Try going up to them with compassion, knowing what they did, and still being kind. And I think for me, because I knew him before this happened, and I knew the kind of person he was, I mean, he could have changed from the time I knew him, because like I said, I graduated a year before him. And so, things could have definitely have changed in that 1 year, and I feel like the girlfriend really did have a big influence on him to make him do this. And so I know that she also had received jail time, but like I said, because she's a minor, the records are sealed, and I don't have access to that. And I don't even think he has access to that, and I would never ask him that, because like I said, I don't like to talk to him about the case. Because I know every day that he's in jail is a reminder that Darlene is no longer there, and that he has to spend 25 years in prison That was his plea deal. He um, pled guilty and took 25 years. And so um, when he gets out, I know that he's going to be facing a lot of backlash. Um, and I do feel bad for Darlene's family, but I also feel bad for Brian's. Um, and that's something that I get a lot of flack for, because I try not to judge people for their mistakes, because treating them horrible and making them feel worse makes me feel horrible. Because if the roles were reversed and I was that person and someone was doing that to me, I always think, how would that affect me and how would that make me feel? And I always default to, it would crush me. And, I wouldn't see a point in living if all people did was just tell me that I'm a horrible person for what I did. And so when we talk, a lot of times we just talk about, like I said, he is extremely religious, and he is learning Hebrew, and so he's learning how to read the Bible in Hebrew. And so like we'll talk about that, and he will tell me like, yeah, like, if we compare it to this, that. And like just having conversations like that and letting him know that there's people out there who he knows don't agree with what he did, but are still willing to conversate with him and not constantly remind him, you're a shitty person, you're a terrible person, because at the end of the day, Darlene's life was taken, and sadly, it was because of her own daughter. If her daughter wasn't dating Brian, or things had gone better and the mom didn't have an issue with Brian, Darlene would still be alive. And that's what's sad. And I hope that Darlene's family, even though that her daughter was a minor at the time, I hope that they realize what she did, the role that she had, and how she manipulated and influenced him. And like, I don't know her name, I've never reached out to her, but like I said, I know Brian. I know the person who perpetrated the crime. And I know the Brian who made me laugh, who I could joke with, and that I could, say things to and just have a good time with. And when I talk to him, I can still see that underneath, but I also can see that he struggles with what he did. And I hope that, the whole, like I said, I get flack for the way I look at things, and that's because I have compassion. And I would urge you that if you are somebody who is just very much, they're guilty, they're guilty, they're guilty, step back and try coming at it from the angle of being compassionate. Example, I get shit for defending Don and Candace. I don't know if they had anything to do with Summer's disappearance. Based on what the sheriff's department has said, there's no evidence proving that. So who am I to judge and say, well, I'm pretty sure that you did it because, there's no other way that it could have happened. And so when I come in and say, well, it may not be that easy. There's so many factors that are involved in Summer's case, and there's things that people want to leave out or not talk about. And for me, it's like there's so many people that are quick to judge Candace, and especially with what she's doing with YouTube and all of that right now. I want you guys just to picture for a second. If you were Candace, your husband is now in jail. Your daughter is missing, and your children and your sons are in foster care. You can't find work because of the people who are boycotting and protesting and affecting your life to the point where you can't find work. Because people are afraid to hire you because they know who you are. And then, how do you think you would feel on top of having all of these other issues, constantly having people show up at your house, say horrible things to you, spread a false narrative across the internet about you being in a relationship with someone you're not even in a relationship in? Candace has, in my opinion, she's been a real trooper. Sure, she has her issues, but it's not my right to... I don't have the ability to go out there and tell Candace, I think that you're guilty, and no. I don't... My mind doesn't work like that. I look at it as, you know what? Candace is going through a lot. What can I do to help Candace and Dawn, or everybody else who's involved? What can I do to help them and be of service to them? And that's one of the things that people don't like that I do. And it's because I have empathy and compassion. And it's funny being on this platform. It's really shown me how so many people who are on here, creator-wise, lack that. And you can get so much more done for a case when you look at it through a different lens, rather than through the lens of just focusing on one particular person, or that there's been a cover-up of some kind. Now, I don't know what happened to Summer. I'm not going to speculate on that. But I will respect Candace, and I will respect Dawn, and I will respect their family. And if people have a problem with that, then I'm okay with that. Because at the end of the day, that's just who I am as a person. I don't just... It's hard for me to stay angry. And I think the hardest thing for me is because people are so angry, we now have issues with misinformation about the case being spread. And how, Summer's case, the sheriff has talked about how it's been affected because of all the misinformation and the people coming down there to investigate. And I just think about that. When the sheriff has to come out and say that the case has been affected because of that, red flags should be going up. And people should be thinking, wow, this isn't okay, because now we're affecting what could be justice for a child, because we're so hyper-focused on the parents. We're not looking for the child. Now the police have gone back to, and they've searched areas around the home again, which credit to the police department, because that shows that they haven't given up on Summer's case. They are continuing to look for that little girl. And, they don't have any reason to believe that she's deceased. And, in my opinion, if Candace and Dawn did have anything to do with that, I believe that will come out later, and I believe that, computers and the cell phones, all of that data will prove if they had a hand in any of that. Because I'm pretty sure that Dawn and Candace would have communicated, through phone calls and text and things like that about, Summer. And another thing that people need to understand is that when we look at cases, Brian's case, it was kind of an open shut case. They were able to close it fairly quickly and get justice for Darlene. But you have a 5-year-old little girl who saw her mom get murdered, and she has to live with the trauma of that for the rest of her life. Her son, who found her and called 911, he has to live with the fact that he found his mom and also knowing that his sister saw what happened. And Summer's case is different. Like I said, it's a lot easier to look at somebody like Brian and Candace and say, you're guilty, you did it, and call them every name in the book and try and prove that they did it. Now, Brian admitted to doing it. And even though he knew it was wrong and he regrets it, he still holds himself accountable. In private to me. The reason that I'm not showing the messages between he and I is because I did send him a message asking if I could share the messages between he and I, and he didn't respond. And since I didn't get his permission, I don't want to invade his privacy. If I hear back from him, then I will go ahead and just post like a short little video showing our DMs and everything like that. But he admitted to it. And he's paying the price for it. People are trying to force Candace and Dawn into paying the price for something that they say that they didn't do. Instead of looking at them and saying, you did it, how about looking at them and saying, you know what? I don't know what it's like to have everybody in the world judging me by my parenting and everything that's happened to me. So what can I do that would help you feel better? If I can't donate money to you, what is something that I can do? Would praying for you, is that what you need? What are things that I can do as a person to show that I want Summer found and I want her case closed? I want her to be safe somewhere. And that's what my hope is that we find her safe and she gets to come home. And I really think the people who are going at Candace are going to push her to the point of having a mental breakdown. And I kind of see that's what's happening right now, is she's acting very recklessly and doing all of this. And I feel it's because of everything that's happening to her. The judgment, the not being able to work, the wanting to have her kids back and everything, and wanting to distance herself from Dawn, which might actually be a healthy thing since their relationship seems to be a tad bit toxic. But look at everything she's been through. There's so much that goes on that, think about it this way too. If you were kind to Candace, do you think she would talk to you and sit down and tell you her story? I bet that if you were kind and treated her respectfully, she would sit down and do a phone call or an actual sit-down interview with you. If you treated her with respect and compassion and kindness. We all have the ability to do that. It's just for some reason so many people on this platform lack it, and I don't understand the reasoning behind that. And maybe that's because of the things that I've had happen to me in my life. So instead of just accusing people of things, I want factual information behind what's being said. And you know, Brian's story is sad, but it's one that's true. Darlene lost her life. I knew this man. I mean, this one's got the better picture. I mean, look at him. He doesn't look like he would have done. He doesn't look guilty of the crime that he did, but he did it, and there was a reason for it. And the one thing that you'll notice about Brian is after he pled guilty, he hasn't been putting any appeals in for his case. They tried this one thing to get his testimony thrown out, and that didn't work. And then at that point, he just decided to take the plea. He hasn't fought it since. He's taken accountability for his role and what happened to Darlene. You know, and I hope that this video also doesn't get people to send hate his way. That's the last thing I want. I wanted it to be informative to show you guys that, you know, just because you think you know somebody doesn't mean there's always a side to somebody that you'll never know. I would have never guessed that he would have killed somebody. The Brian I knew wouldn't have done that. But you can see the influence that the girlfriend had over him that made him do that. And so just, I guess my main thing would be is this story is a cautionary tale. Be careful of who you trust. And if you see things like this happening or think, you know, something like with Brian, I never would have guessed it. His friend had the opportunity to go to the police and let them know that Brian and the girlfriend were planning on murdering the mom. He never did. The only time that they found out about it is after the murder, and they were interviewing people, and Joshua said, you know, finally came out and talked about what happened on the phone call. And, you know, Brian denies that was talked about on the phone call. So, I mean, it's just, if you know that somebody is thinking about committing a crime, it doesn't hurt to either one, speak to the person, or two, if you're afraid of doing that, just contact your local authorities and report the, you know, activity anonymously, saying, I am worried that this person's safety is in jeopardy because of this. And the police will take that information and they will act on it accordingly. But at the same time, one of the things that I've noticed here too is, for some reason, the people online here think it's a great idea to call CPS on people they don't know who have kids. Now, I don't understand that logic. I can understand if you're a mandated reporter and you actually see abuse. That is one thing. But if you are just somebody on the internet watching something and you don't like somebody and you call CPS just because you want to be petty, that's not okay. CPS is there to protect children who need to be in a safe space. By calling them and reporting somebody, you are wasting their time and their resources for other children who actually need help. And that whole thing needs to stop. The whole, well, I'm just going to call CPS on you because I don't agree with you or I don't like you. And the doxing, too. The doxing on here is terrible. And YouTube doesn't seem to care if people get doxed. Or if people show up at other people's homes. YouTube doesn't really care. They're like, well, that's not our problem. Well, when you tell them, yeah, it is because you're allowing it on your platform, they don't do anything. YouTube just tends to let things go until somebody either gets arrested or something bad happens. And that's just my point of view from the way that I've seen it. So there's so much negativity that can go away. And there's so much good that the communities can do if they would just stop acting this way and try working together. Like, just put your differences aside and work with each other to have a common goal. Stop fighting with each other. Stop threatening each other. Stop doxing each other. That doesn't solve anything. It's really immature, and it causes more problems, and it puts people's safety and the safety of their loved ones at risk just because you're petty and you think that it's okay to do that. I guess that would be my final thoughts, wrapping it up. People make mistakes in life. Everybody does, everybody will. If you think you're perfect, I hate to tell you, you're not. You have flaws, and that's just the way the world is. Everybody has flaws, and everybody will do things in life that aren't good. Brian killed somebody. He's paying the price for that in prison right now. 25 years. And, when you look at people like Candace, who I was talking about earlier, it's going to be one of those things where we may never know what happened to Summer. We may never find Summer. And if that's the case, when we're talking about missing children, a lot of times it takes, if they're not found within the first 72 hours, chances are you'll never find them. And that's just statistics. They are either being trafficked or they've been killed and they're buried somewhere or whatever the case may be. And that's not just with missing children, that's with adults too. So instead of attacking people, treat people with kindness and respect. You don't have to like Candace, but if you were to be, what's the word that I'm trying to think of? Non-confrontational with her, but also kind of let her know your feelings. That's different. And I feel that she would be more respectful of you and be willing to talk to you rather than just, getting her fired from a job and now she can't find one. hitting her below the belt because you don't have anything else to go on. And then another thing would be people who are trying to raise money for Summer and all of these other missing cases, like for example Oakley Carlson. I did a short video about her. They had a fundraiser for her on Twitch over the weekend, and it was really cool to see everybody who was participated in that. Make sure when you donate, you're donating to an actual charity or to a GoFundMe that's funded by somebody who's affiliated with the case. Don't give somebody, don't go to someone's personal PayPal and give them money, or their Cash App, or their Venmo, or their GoFundMe. Especially when it comes to creators, never give to a creator for a case on any reason with their personal information. Always give to something that is specifically directed towards whatever they're covering, because when you donate to them with their personal things, that's their money and you don't get to see where it goes. And that's one of the things that I have an issue with, is I feel like people are looking at how much money they can make off of missing people, and that's a whole other video that I could talk about. But we all make mistakes, and we're entitled. If you want to feel angry, go ahead, be angry. You don't have to listen to me. You can just think I'm just some dumb bitch who doesn't know a thing. That's fine. I don't care. I really don't. What I would hope you would learn, though, is figuring out how to be compassionate to people who you think have done wrong. That is one of the hardest things, and I'll always tell people that is one of the hardest things that you could do, is be kind to somebody who did something wrong. Treating Brian with kindness. I could be mean, but I'm not. I know people who have actually sent him death threats that I know, that I went to school with. And when they found this out and they found out that he was in jail, they started saying, hey, once you get out, I'm coming for you. He's gotten death threats from people. And that's not okay. We can have our differences. We can talk about it. Sometimes justice takes time. And just because something happens slow doesn't mean that the police have stopped caring, or things aren't going as fast as you want. There's a reason these things take time, and it's because the evidence that they don't want it getting out, especially if they only have a little bit, and they're trying to grab whatever they can before they charge people. And so if you I promise you, if you can try and find a way to be compassionate, or at least be amicable and respectful with somebody you disagree with, you'd be amazed at the progress you could make with that person and talking to them. It's just, we can all be better. I can be better. I'm not perfect by any way, shape, or form. But I know that I do have a good heart, and I do have compassion even for people who have done something horrific and terrible. And I know that everybody has the ability to do that. It's just pushing yourself to do it. Some people can and some people can't. And it's tough. But I think that you would be surprised with the rewards that come from treating people with respect and being kind. Anyways, I'm gonna finish off this video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I'm sorry for all the rambling, but I just, when I feel passionate about something, I kind of go on tangents and talk about it, and sometimes it will hit somebody and be like, wow, I never thought of it that way, or whatever. And so anyways, I'm gonna finish off the video. I hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your day, night, morning, whenever you're watching this, and thank you for joining me. And I hope that you enjoyed this video, and leave comments in the comment section. Let me know what you thought about it, and if it was really boring, if I talk too much, or what. Like I said, still trying to figure the YouTube thing out, so all the feedback helps. Anyways, thank you so much, you guys. I'll talk to you later. Bye.